Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good to see everyone and all of your smiling faces, and getting ready to do some planting tomorrow. I'm thinking Good Friday. Our family always had the plants and seeds and flowers to make a season beautiful. So we're going to kick off the meeting with Dr. LeVar leading us in prayer. Thank you.
And let me report on the flag building. We had a great day last Saturday. We built 80 flags. We're done by 10 o'clock. Helping us, one of which is Sylvia Alvarez. Sister in the class in that family. I can just say, right? Great fun, and we got the system down where we can build flags now. So that's good. Would you join me in the spirit of prayer? Eternal God, we give you thanks for this absolutely gorgeous spring day coming on Maundy, Thursday of Holy Week. We give you thanks for this group gathered together to be your people in this place. We ask your spirit to be upon us, to bless the work that we do for our community, to bless this food, take it to the nourishment of our bodies, and keep us in your peace. In the name of Christ, amen. Amen. And we'll be building flags in a week, not this Saturday, but a week from Saturday. Once again, okay.
Thank you, Dr. LeVar. Next, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dr. Parra. Thank you.
Please face the flag, put your hand on your heart, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now we'll enjoy the national anthem.
Oh, sing, by the dawn's early light, oh, so proudly and the twilight's ghastly, my stars through the perilous night, when the lamb mostly watched, burst the gallantly stream, and the rockets red, of mercy, gave proof to the night, that was there. Oh, say does that star shine? You sang very well. Have a seat.
Thank you, Neil and Sandra. So glad both of you are doing well, and good to see you. Well, if we had time, but thank you. Next week, maybe. At this time, we're going to have an introduction of guests, and let's run. You have that ready? Thank you. Oh man, keep coordinating.
Well, thank you for being here, guys. We do have some guests visiting today, but we also have our district governor here, Max Duplan. Just give her a big welcome. Thank you for being here. We do have a couple more guests, but also prospective members, more like. We have Donna Ariano. If you want to stand up and anyone welcome her. As well. He's going to be part of our new members. I do have another person here that I kind of known for quite a bit. My little sister, Sylvia Alvarez. She's actually a guest of Christina Garcia, one of our new members. So she's a guest of Christina Garcia, and Sylvia also will be joining the Rotary Club here pretty soon as well. That she passed the test. You guys haven't told her about the test yet, right? The 4-way test. The 4-way test. Then we also have Ben Rosenbaum. welcome Ben. He was here a couple weeks ago as well, so we're excited to have you back. And looking forward to having you be part of the club as well. And as far as that, we also did have another young lady. She's a physician that I spoke with a couple weeks back. She is going to be a new member. We submitted her information to Club Runner. She does travel, so she will be joining us through Zoom on a lot of the calls, but she will be joining us in person whenever she's here. So we're pretty excited about the growth that we're having in the club. I do want to give a quick shout out, quick report. Oh, and we also have General Zapata here. So thank you for being here, sir. Councilman General Zapata. And I wanted to give you guys a quick report, if you guys don't mind, about the Irving Marathon that we just had this past weekend. It was our 10th year anniversary. So we got started. Our friends at ICTM put together a video for us that kind of highlighted the experience. We ended up with about 2,500 participants. We had about 450 people completing the marathon, which is a Boston Marathon qualifier. And of course, we had a half marathon, a 10K, 5K. But it turned out to be a great event. The weather worked out great. But I'll let Jordan kind of, if you have that video that ICTM put together, just a quick recap so that way you guys get an idea. We would love to see more Rotarians out there. Shane was up there volunteering. Rick Lindsay was up there. He was one of our MCs on the stage. And I know we had Terry Oliver helping out as well. And for some of the other events, there has been like Dr. Parra was there as well for some of their events, leading traffic. And so there's always an opportunity for you guys to come out and do different things. But I'll let Jordan kind of play this quick video. We'll play it at the end to give you guys an idea. So, but again, keep inviting people, guys, to the Rotary. You guys should have the QR code card. So if you guys see a prospective member, they will scan the QR code or the cards that we provided you guys. If you need more, Shane has some. And so those need that. And again, what the QR code does, it provides a portal for the prospective member to view our videos. It also provides an application link so they can send in their application and have that information to Club Runner. So that streamlines the membership process. So if you guys, again, if you have a prospective member, have them scan the QR code, that information comes to us and we contact them, and that's how we're making them be part of the club. So I'm always around if you guys have any questions on how that works. So actually, you have a question about?
What's the Boston qualifier?
Repeat that one more time.
I've heard you say Boston qualifier many times.
Yes.
So they have to get a certain time.
Yes.
To get it.
Yes. So Bob's question was about the Irving Marathon, about being a Boston Marathon qualifier, and if the participants have to meet at a certain time to qualify, and the answer is yes. But also, in order for the event to be a Boston Marathon qualifier, the event has to be measured and it has to be exact as a route that will be in Washington, 26.2 miles, needs to be 26.2 miles here. So we bring an expert to come and measure the route, which is the same. We are looking at the same person that measures the USA Olympic trials for the marathon race route. He lives here in Dallas, so he measures the race route and he comes and works the course for us. So very lucky that we have a pretty strong team that helps with the marathon. But that's all I have for new membership, and I guess Jordan and I, we're gonna play that video for you guys later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. New members, we are so delighted that Jordan's helping us to get the word out, and we gained 2 more at our social networking event, and social media makes a difference. And all the members asking everyone to attend a meeting and get to know how Rotarians make a difference. So thank you. I'm going to ask Dr. Large to give us an update. Rotary represented some golfers at the Salvation Army event, and so I think Bill would love to give an update, and I know I had fun.
We lost.
You didn't have to say that.
You know, we played pretty good. The wind was horrific.
Oh,
That's right. The wind was blowing the ball across the greens. Wind was horrific. Par. Two over par, but the winning score was 57, which means that there's creative mathematics going on in those things. We did have a good time. One of the things that we
Now, you might mention everyone could purchase a pass and get
Oh, yeah.
all of that.
Yeah, they
and
could
get
purchase
points
those.
deducted.
do all that stuff.
We did.
We were honest. The one sad thing that happened, we found out, I found out yesterday morning, that there was one of the golfers fell out of the golf cart. A smaller built guy, and the next cart ran over him.
Oh, no.
And right, and they had to pick the golf cart up off of him, and they took him to Parkland to ICU in an ambulance. He's messed up, serious ribs and head injuries, and had to have emergency surgery. I mean, he's messed up. Now, we don't know any of the details about that, other than the fact the lady at the golf course is she's a little spaced out about it yesterday morning. But yeah, there was a serious injury. So when you're driving around a golf cart, hang on, hang on to the thing, don't fall out, because they're dangerous. You run over something. So, but otherwise, Linda and I played together, and Jose played with Edwin Hardy's daughter, and we just had a great time. I mean, we had a really fun time, and she's a pretty good golfer, by the way. So with that.
Yes, thank you. We did have fun, and I might add that Dr. Parra quickly communicated he was just learning how to play golf. Well, none of us believed that, because he could get that driver and put it on the green, and we were like, okay, you've been playing alone. But he was a tremendous asset to the team. And we were just mentioning, we enjoyed playing with your daughter, Jamie.
She enjoyed it very much.
Thank you. We also have a couple of awards to give out, and I'd like to ask past presidents and any of the board members that would like to join me so we can give out some Paul Harris Awards. So, Rick, would you like to come up? Robert? Anyone else that would like to join us? Shane?
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So we're just blessed that we have we're very blessed that we have our district governor with us, Max Plant, and we have an award for you. Please come forward. Okay. And so.
We're reading that correctly.
Yes, sir.
Paul Harris fellow +7.
That's
+7.
awesome.
Outstanding. And you're also a
Paul Harris Society,
Society.
request member. So, three ways.
great.
Awesome. Well, here's your pen. And we're delighted to have you with us today. And so
Camera's right there in front of you. Yeah. There he is.
Where's smiling? Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, Rick, is there, you got some new numbers, can you just give some background on Paul Harris' work?
What a +7 is. What a +7, yeah. To join and become a member of the Paul Harris Society, to join, you would donate $1,000. And we have a program set up here in our club where you can put that on a monthly amount, so you can pay that off over 1 year. But we also have a program that if you make a donation of, help me out here, Bobby, 500, that if we have points, we can help you get that first one. And then once you get the first one, it just seems that you want to donate and move to a Paul Harris +1. So the next $1,000 becomes a Paul Harris +1, +2, +3 as you donate. And the gold pin is for your first 1,000, and then you get a blue sapphire for each of the next 5, and then you switch to red, like the one that I believe, past President Robert has, and as will. So all of those monies go to, and Bobby Haas back there is also a red, what do you call those? Rubies, thank you. But the monies go to the Paul Harris Foundation, and then the foundation uses those dollars to fund different programs that Rotary International deems appropriate. So the program of fighting the children enslavement that are being brought over here, human trafficking, that now the drug dealer cartels have realized is more profitable than selling drugs, but also the WASH program. So as you go out and read what's happening on the Rotary website and read your magazine that comes to your home, you will see dollars that are allocated. So while our club, since COVID has affected us, we've not been able to ask for grants to send students or to send a group to Jamaica or wherever we did in the past. We will see, hopefully we will see those things happen. But those dollars go in. So the 1.3 million Rotarians, I can't tell you the up-to-date value. Governor, do you know, with the foundation?
So actually, what I wanted to add to that is there are so many different levels of giving within the Paul Harris. Once you get your first pen, $1,000, it's a Paul Harris Fellow. But if you indicate that you will give $1,000 a year, you become a member of the Paul Harris Society. And if you put at least $10,000 in your will, you become a member of the bequest. And there's different levels of bequest as well. If you reach $10,000, you become a major donor. So we'd love to see everybody become all the different levels. I got notified, and I know I need to give this mic back to you. I got notified from one of the clubs, actually it was Denison, that they've become a 100% Paul Harris club. So that means everybody in the club achieved it. So appreciate the push for foundation.
Thank you, Matt. We have one more award to Dr. Lamar. He'll come back up. We have a pen review also.
Dr. LeVar, this is a Paul Harris Fellow +3. Thank you.
A few times you get to take your picture.
You know, I don't believe in that.
Hold on just a minute.
All right, there, buddy. And we're smiling. He's touching me. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I wanted to give a shout out for our district governors conference. Not this coming weekend, next weekend, and I was going to see if Max or John would like to, influence more of our members to attend, correct?
So next weekend, we have a great fun event coming up. It is our district conference. It's the last thing I'm responsible for planning this year, so I'm really looking forward to it. John is passing out flyers relating to it. I recognize the print is small, but we're going to start out by having a fun night of bowling, food, and games at Penstack, right here in Irving, so it's convenient for everybody. If you're a bowler, come out and show us what you got. And if you're not a bowler, just come out and have fun anyway. Everything's included in the $55 for your bowling, your dinner, and your ability to play bumper cars and all kinds of video games, rock climbing. So if you want to take your frustrations out on a fellow Rotarian in a bumper car, here is your chance. The next day, we have our actual district conference. We've got a great lineup of speakers. We're gonna start out with Sunny Sharma from Houston, who has done all sorts of accomplishments in the medical field. He will be our international president's representative. He will be followed by Rebecca Jowers, who is the director at La Poema. This organization actually works with individuals to be the eyes and ears to identify human trafficking. When they're notified of an instance, they go out and help bring the victim in and help prepare them to be able to go out and self-sufficient in life on their own. Now, our election speaker, I think you're all going to be interested in. It is Dale Hansen, and he's going to be talking actually about abuse in athletics. So I think that's going to be a really interesting talk. After that, we have our Peace Scholar talking about some work she's doing out in Thailand. We have a doctor with the Brain Health Institute talking about a lot of the studies that they've done that link how you live your life, what stress you have, diet, everything in your life, and how that affects your mood, your brain health, and dementia, and so forth. We'll have a short service project where we write thank yous to those individuals in industry that are helping to identify victims of human trafficking. And then Saturday night, we have our big foundation and awards banquet. So if our club's been nominated for any awards, you have until tomorrow to get in the nominations. Please come out, and every level of Paul Harris giving that recipients are there for, we're going to recognize at the banquet too. So everybody who got a pin today or who has gotten a pin in the past, at the various giving levels, we'd like to see you there and recognize you. So during the day, registration is $55. The banquet at night is $75. John's needing to turn in an account, so I hope to see several of you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Max.
And perhaps we could tell our interactors into doing a bowling team too, if the club can help them get there.
That would work. I'm hopeful that we have a large presence there. Have some fun and support Max, and she has a fantastic agenda with some excellent speakers, so I think everyone would enjoy it. So thank you, Max. Okay, this time we're going to have our Director of Programs, Ron Manning, come forth and introduce our speaker. And thinking we're in for a treat. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, everybody. It's been really exciting. We've heard from a lot of different organizations, throughout the year. Charitable organizations about what's going on in our communities, how we can help. We've heard from business leaders and how they've reacted to pandemics. But in this case, I'm really excited to bring a speaker to talk to us about the intelligence that it takes to have an impact on our community. And also getting the perspective, not only from a practitioner, as a police officer, and who currently sits as the chief of police of Tarrant County Sheriff Office and senior fellow for the Center of Secure Free Society. And so our speaker today is going to give us some tremendous insights into what it takes to grab that intel, to deal with that intel, and to have an impact. And so it's my honor to introduce our speaker today, David Grantham.
I was telling someone earlier that I grew up in Florida attending Rotary clubs with my uncle. So every time I get the chance, he's 92 now, and every time I get the chance, I send him photos of me speaking, and he just lights up. So it makes his world. And quickly, are there any veterans in the room? Right. Thank you for your service. And I don't know if you've heard this story, being in the intel community, we like to work in a lot of unusual things. And when the Pope came to visit a while back, he was up in Philadelphia, if you recall. What people don't know is that he actually went out to the country. He convinced his driver to take him out there without a security, without anything. So they were out in the country driving on these old dirt roads. And at one point, as best we can tell, he asked his driver, he said, "Hey, let me drive." The driver said, no, sir, but that's inappropriate. Come on, just, nobody's out here, no one's gonna see us, I'll just drive real quick and we'll go back. So they switched. Well, unbeknownst to the driver, the Pope has quite a lead foot. So he was booking down this dirt road. And a police officer, sheriff's deputy, was there, speeding, pulled him over, goes to the window, throws down the window. He said, "I'm sorry, officer, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, you were speeding." "Hold on one second." He goes back to his car, calls dispatch, said, "Hey, I pulled over a black sedan for speeding." Dispatch said, "What's the problem? Writing a ticket." He goes, "Well, whoever's in the car, the Pope is the chauffeur." I always like to tell that story because intelligence can be very much like that. You get all the information, you have what's right in front of you, and it still doesn't quite make sense when you're trying to translate it back to the people who need to do something about it. So there's really the synopsis of my talk today. What I wanted to do was talk about the three things. There's a lot of things we learned in the war on terror, but there was three things that I wanted to focus on, and then show you how today we're using what we learned to enhance public safety, to improve law enforcement. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about me. Now, am I going to do I have something to control the slides, or do I just point to you? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I was raised in Tampa, Florida, and I came from a mixed family. My mother was from the Dominican Republic. Her family was from Cuba. My dad was from the country in Florida. His family was from Southern Alabama. So I had very, very hick, very, very foreign. My grandfather didn't speak any English. And then I grew up in the community of Tampa, which is very diverse. And growing up there in the 80s and 90s, I loved sports, particularly basketball. And I found myself a minority oftentimes in the basketball court because my dad's a minister, my mom's a teacher, very low income areas. So that's the areas that I was often around, and that's where we would play basketball. And we also grew up near a lake, so I loved to fish. I thought I was a kind of a country kid. I was running in the woods and things. So you can only imagine as I grow up, it was really awkward when you go out, you unpack your Cuban sandwich listening to rap music while fishing. You know, none of your friends are looking at you going, "Who are you?" I didn't fit in a box. And for a long time, that kind of bothered me. I really didn't have a full identity. And as I grew up, I kind of came to accept that, hey, you're just mixed in all kinds of ways. You're never going to fit in fully with one group, and that's just the way it is. So I learned to get along with a lot of different groups. That's what ended up happening. As I got to college, I grew up in church when my father was a minister. I went to the University of South Florida, which is a very liberal, secular college from where I was used to. So once again, I'm splitting an identity here, trying to thread my way through a different environment, the one that I grew up in. Never mind, it was academic, it was strenuous. So as I'm moving forward, I decided, I want to go to the ROTC program. I want to be in the military. And I joined the Air Force, signed up to join the Air Force. And I wanted to be in one career field, Office of Special Investigations. We are essentially the NCIS, we just don't have our own TV show, right? And that was really the only career field I wanted to be into. Why? Because they're the spies for the Air Force. And ever since I was a kid, I wanted to be a spy. I had dreams of walking down the streets of Havana in a guayabera, you know, dressed up in some way that didn't realize I was an American, wearing pistachios in the open market in Pakistan. These were the thoughts that went through my head even as a kid. And so when I applied and got accepted to OSI, I was elated. And once I got into the intelligence world, into the community, once I started going to training, for the first time in my life, I realized all the groups that I didn't quite fit in growing up, now I can relate to anybody. And for the first time, I felt like my conflicted identity growing up benefited me, because as an intelligence officer, I have to be able to talk to anybody. I have to be able to relate to anybody, fit into any situation to develop information. Our primary job with OSI is human intelligence. You can go to the next slide. We do human intelligence. Within the intelligence community, it is much like business, much like education, there's specialties. And I worked in counterintelligence, which is essentially the spies watching the spies. So the intelligence community has people that are out gathering information actively from our adversaries, and our adversaries have people spying on us. We were the team that watched the people that were spying on us. So we learned what we call tradecraft, things that behavior that displays that indicates they're an intelligence officer. We learned surveillance. One thing to know with surveillance is interesting. People will change clothes, but they'll never change their shoes. So if you ever feel like you're being followed and it looks like the same person, just look at their shoes. There's a good chance they haven't changed. If you do surveillance, well, now I've improved your techniques. So as we get into the war, I deployed in 2006, and that's when I wrote a book about my time during the 2006. This is right before the surge. So it was a very rough time. This was my first deployment as a young Air Force officer with Air Force Office of Special Investigation. So I'm deployed, and we learned really quick that the intelligence that we were taught was good in principle, but had to be adapted to this new environment. You can only imagine, I'm coming from being trained by a lot of Cold War experts. And in the Cold War, intelligence is very methodical. It was very long-term. You develop sources, you build rapport, you collect data, you send it back, they analyze it, then they make policy changes, and it was this back and forth. When we got to Iraq, as you can remember, there were roadside bombs killing soldiers, airmen, Marines, left and right. So we had to take the principles that we learned and essentially speed them up, which is very difficult to do. You want to be efficient, quick, but accurate. That's a very difficult thing to do in the intelligence community. Because as you can imagine, when you're delivering intelligence, people are making decisions based on the information you're providing. And if that information is not accurate or not correct, they may be moving heaven and earth to change a strategy based purely on your information. So we had to work hard at developing sources quickly, effectively, getting the accurate information so people would live. In that, at the end of the day, we're talking to a source getting information, and we knew it was life and death. This was not a joke, and it was stressful. So the first thing that we really learned was how to do that. How to collect information quickly, analyze it, get as best as accurate a picture as we could, and getting that out. One of the second things we learned is the dynamic on the ground and appreciating nuance. Now again, I can appreciate nuance growing up. In fact, when I moved here, I was eating at a Mexican restaurant. A guy looked at me and said, "Oh, you must like this." I went, "I've never had Mexican in my life." My parents are from Dominican Republic. I don't know about this. Where's the rice and beans? You know, I don't know what this is. But in my mind, that nuance was instinctive. And while we're on the ground, for instance, in Afghanistan, you can only imagine. There's tribes, there's bitter rivals between chiefs, between families within a tribe that you don't know about, you would never understand. And yet you have to dig into the nuance. Because if you're going to stop an attack, you have to know who's going to attack you and why. If you haven't stopped to appreciate that, then you're going to fail in your mission. So as we were, especially in Afghanistan, as we were digging into information, it became really apparent to me early on, I've got to understand these nuances, not academically, but for application. What do I do with this? How do I train? In fact, the video that I'll sometimes show, we were, and I recount this story in my book, we were collecting munitions back from villages so the Taliban could use them for explosives. And we would go back and we would trade things with them, food, toys for the kids. And then they would give us bombs. And I'm not joking, there are bombs everywhere in Afghanistan. Every kind of munition. You literally will find them on the side of the road, all over the place. So we would collect them, detonate, destroy them so that nobody could use them. Turns out the village we went to, that village was negotiating over us before we got there with the Taliban. The Taliban said, we want to attack you, or as best the intelligence we had. We learned later that they said, we want to attack them. They said, no, don't do it. We would rather have a trade. It's easier that way. We would benefit better from that. The Taliban said, okay. And what was so interesting about that is the nuance. Why would the Taliban negotiate with this village rather than tell them this is what you're going to do? Why would that village have the gall to stand up to the Taliban and say, no, we're going to negotiate about this? Those were important nuances. And we had to dig into that, and it helped us understand there was relationships there that we didn't know about. Basic relationships. But it helped understand why that area of Afghanistan operated the way it did. The third thing that we learned, and this is part of along that same story, is what I like to call the non-sexy stuff. Finance, finance, logistics, how they organize themselves. There's a lot of things like that in intelligence. You can go to the next slide. There you go. Oh, sorry. That's not coming through, but faster intelligence, knowing nuances and funding activity. So some of those other items we really found crucial to understand. Yes, I wanted to fight hand to hand. I wanted to kick down a door, but at the end of the day, we knew that's what mattered. If you knew where they're getting their money, much easier to stop many, many attacks rather than just one at a time. If you knew how they're organized and you take out the right person, the organization falls apart. It can't function. So those three things were important, and those things we learn now. What we're learning today. And before I jump into what we're learning today, I always like to quote the great philosopher Paul Harvey. In times like these, it's always good to remember that there's always been times like these. So what we're learning locally is much of what we saw there. So we've appreciated the anticipating the threats. Now, you can only imagine how important this strategy is, for example, mass shootings. We just had one in New York. Turns out this guy was all over YouTube saying all kinds of crazy things about killing people. School shootings. The very model we learned in the War on Terror, we're applying today to stop those events. But it's familiar to us because we've done it. These were a lot of veterans are looking at this going, yeah, we're familiar with this. You have a threat, we have to act on it quickly, but we have to have right information. You can't just go to some high schools, start pulling kids out. You gotta have right information. You can't stop the whole education system. So to us, it was very familiar. So a lot of veterans looked at that and said, we got a plan, we understand this. The other one with nuance. What we've learned with nuance is, for instance, drug cartels, how they operate in the North Texas area. There's a lot of nuance. A lot of them are family-based. A lot of them are connected back to Mexico and other parts of Latin America for very specific reasons. If they're connected back to Colombia, you can expect cocaine. There's a lot of nuance within that. Can I get my water?
Yeah.
Please, thank you. And one, thank you, I didn't tip you. One thing that we found really interesting, by the way, what I didn't share up front is I'm the chief over intelligence technology for the Tarrant County Sheriff's Office, along with my work as a senior fellow. And we work in the security side, we work on issues in Latin America. So I have an academic sense of this. My PhD is in Latin American history. So very familiar with the nuance in the academic side, but also the day-to-day operations. And one thing we learned very quickly is the nuance with how drug organizations operate. One thing that we found also during COVID, when the restaurants were shut down, a lot of these organizations use restaurants to launder money. Not news, that's fairly well known. But what we came to find is that there was a specific cartel that liked to brag about where they were from, and they would put their local city in the title of their restaurant. It was a nod back to their bosses, back to their land, but it told us who they were with. And it was that little nuance that helped us put together a whole list of people operating in our area who they were connected with. So when law enforcement engaged them, we could advise them, here's who they are. Here's how they're probably going to react to you because of where they're from. The last thing with what I call the non-sexy, the funding, especially finance. We learned during COVID, when the border was shut down, that money had to continue to flow. Drugs had to continue to be exchanged, but they had to find new ways to do it. Once you started having migrants coming to the border, I started looking at that, and we had our team analyze some of the data that Texas DPS was sharing. And one thing was interesting, what we saw, drug seizures would spike right after a pocket of migrants came to the border. So migrants were, we call it weaponizing the needy. These needy people were used as distraction, and you can see it in the stats. You can see the seizures. So the money was flowing behind them. We were able to tell DPS, based on that, there's a good chance that if you just follow the migrants, if you get ahead of that, you'll find the money, you'll find the drugs where it's being exchanged. So what are we experiencing today? There's two things, and I'm going to leave you with hope, so don't worry, I'm not going to make this dramatic and awful. We all got depressed. That's a lethal dose of heroin. We left. On the right, lethal dose of fentanyl, which you've probably heard much of in the news. Carfentanil is elephant tranquilizer. That's a lethal dose. What we're seeing today, right now, is the experimentation phase for drugs is shrinking to an almost imperceptible amount. I like to say there's no more Jimi Hendrix weed. There's no more gateways. People are dying the first and second time they experiment with the drug. So I tell people, go back to your communities, go back to your friends, your churches, your schools, your local groups, and please advise them that this isn't a joke. There is very, very little space between people that are experimenting and those that accidentally die. And we call it poisoning, not overdose, because it comes to a point where people they're not overdosing as if they knew what they were taking. they're being poisoned because all the drugs coming across now are laced with a lot of this. So I encourage you, go back and tell them, stay away from drugs. If it wasn't already important, it's more important than ever. The other thing that we see a lot of is fraud. And with COVID, all the money that's been printed and distributed, it's caused a disruption in the market, as we see, as legitimate workers and citizens. It's also caused disruption in the drug market, in criminal markets. And they're resorting to fraud, many of them. Partly because there was plenty of money to go get from the government. You've probably seen the statistics of how much money was doled out, stimulus money, to fraudulent accounts, fraudulent people. And we've encountered that over and over and over again. So when I reference that, I say that because I want people to understand first, if you're a victim of fraud, you or your business, report it to local law enforcement, because fraud sometimes is all the time. I know it's embarrassing at minimum, it's hurtful at best, but it's important for law enforcement because fraud, there has to be a threshold for a case to be opened. And if you were defrauded at a certain amount, and you think, well, that's not enough to get the police attention, you could be the 4th, 5th, or 10th victim of that person. And if you report it and everyone else does, now it meets a threshold to prosecute that person. So don't ever think that yours isn't as important as it should be, or I shouldn't bother the police with this. Report it. Fraud is very, very difficult to, difficult to prosecute. It's difficult if we're not being told everything. Share it. Let law enforcement parse through it. Okay, hope. Come on, Dave. Give me some hope. With all of this, I like to say, and this is why Rotary is so important. Local power, local decisions, local solutions. Because people obviously say, okay, all this going to do, what do we do about it? It starts right here. I've had the pleasure of being in the military, working on the federal side, working with big think tanks in DC, and I've worked now on the county level, the local level. So I've got to see the gamut. And I can tell you, local decisions matter more. They carry more weight. They create more influence. Successful solutions on a local level are always, always wanted on the federal and state level. State and federal, they don't have time to figure out solutions. They can't come in here. I mean, let's be honest, federal government, I worked for them, not that efficient. When the local people bring solutions, they eat it up because they just don't have time, nor do they know the local situation. So I always encourage you, I know sometimes it feels like this big, giant threat, this something you can't overcome, but you can, and it starts here. So it starts with making sure your mayors, making sure your city council, your county commissioners are implementing plans that you individually and your groups want to see. And when those successful things happen, movement happens. Just in Tarrant County, we've been working hard on the fentanyl issue, and within 2 months, Governor Abbott was in our office, wanted to know what we're doing. DHS was calling my office of 3 people at the time, saying, where are you getting this intelligence? We want to find out how we can replicate that. And I'm sitting at my desk with 3 other guys, and I'm like, wow, look at that. Federal government, a massive amount of federal employees are calling us, 4 of us down here, in little Tarrant County. So I encourage you, stay active, bring solutions, start solutions. And I'm telling you, this is where it starts, right here. So with that, I want to thank you for having me. I genuinely love being with Rotary clubs, and I am open to any questions if we have time.
Sure. Any questions?
So I'm intrigued by this whole idea of decision making within counterintelligence. So within counterintelligence, you know, you talk about situations on the fly, basically, making decisions on the fly, right? And so obviously you have a lot of information coming to you, and some of it is obviously misinformation. So out there in the field, in the real world on the fly, how do you go about the decision-making process between distinguishing between truth and misinformation?
There's I wouldn't say there's a multitude of ways, but you tailor your approach to your environment is the first thing, but the principles remain the same. And that's information credibility, the source reliability, and their access to the information. Those are really the three things that you look at immediately. So the information credibility, there's a standard 5 points that you look at. Is this probable? Has it been reported before, but not in this way? Is it possible? This has been reported before, and this is exactly what's been said before by other groups. So you're cross-referencing what the information is. Is it brand new, never been reported, but it makes sense? Is it brand new, never been reported, and doesn't make sense? So you can see, you start delineating the information. Then you go to your source. If you're my source, you're an Afghan villager, you're the first time you've come to me and spoken to me. Your information, your credibility is low right now. I don't know who you are. I don't know why you're talking to me. Whereas if we had built a relationship over a few months and you've already provided information in the past, your credibility begins to go up. Or let's say you worked for another agency before, and I call them, and they say, no, this guy's good. We haven't talked to him in 6 months, but everything he gave us was solid. Your credibility goes up. Then I'll look at your access. If you're the neighbor of the bomb maker, and you say, I think he's making bombs. Have you seen him make bombs? No. I'm the bomb maker. Here's my hand. I've lost 3 fingers. Your access goes up. So you couple those things, and that's a simplifying it, but you can see quickly in 20 minutes if you hand me the information, I could make a fairly good judgment call on how, and then you grade the information. That way the recipient understands, I'm not telling you this is fact, fiction, or otherwise. You say it's high confidence, medium confidence, or low confidence. Because we want people to understand we have confidence in the information based on the probability of its accuracy. That way they can make a conscious decision, and if someone comes along, why did you do that? They had medium confidence in this, based on the judgment and based on the information, I decided. So it gives them something to rely on. Does that answer your question?
Perfectly, thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
I have one. You say in Iraq, supposedly they have weapons of mass destruction. We never found any, is that correct?
As far as I know.
How did that?
Unless you want to tell me something.
I'd like your comments
On that?
Yes.
While we were there was nothing found. There were remnants of things that looked suspicious. There was intelligence that it had been moved out to Syria. That was never confirmed. And what I've come to believe at this point, unless information surfaces otherwise, is Saddam was inflating what he had. It's what we see Putin doing before he invaded the Ukraine. You escalate to de-escalate, is what we call it. You escalate your rhetoric in hopes that they will de-escalate their action against you because they're scared of what you might do. Once we invaded and realized this guy was a paper tiger, he didn't have anything. We began to think he was escalating to de-escalate. The source of the information, and the code name escapes you, but it's out there now. Once they started chasing the source of the information, it turns out it wasn't very reliable, which you would think intelligence community with all these people that somebody would have raised their hand and said, you're basing a war off one person, it's not very reliable. But so I think what it was is Putin, or excuse me, Saddam was exaggerating some. Now, I do think there were chemical weapons probably at his disposal in different places, but not at the magnitude that they said would be there in order to justify the invasion. Any other questions? I could talk about this all day long. I just think that-
Thank you. And I'm sure David will be able to stay a few minutes if anyone would like to visit with him and gain more information. Thank you, David. That was very nice. Yes, sir?
Yes, with books as well.
Oh, yes, books are for sale, so he will be at the back, and I'm hopeful many of us will embrace a book and gain a lot more detail. Yes,
We're gonna get a picture real quick,
oh, okay.
and that way you can share it.
Yeah, with my.
Yes.
A board meeting will follow the noon meeting today. Everyone's welcome to join us. Our noon meeting next week, our president-elect Shane Webb has graciously invited us to have our noon meeting at his church. And that's where we will gather. So if anyone needs direction or information regarding the meeting site, Shane can help you with that. It's just what, 2 or 3 blocks on South O'Connor.
3650 North O'Connor, 5 blocks south, just past North Gates. If you're coming, we're gonna have some good food. So even if you don't normally eat, you may wanna plan to eat this time. I don't have the restaurant, because I've got a bidding war going on between 2 caterers. But that will sort itself out. Both options are wonderful, so you won't be disappointed. But please come and enjoy that with us. And it's the middle building on the campus. So come in past the sanctuary, and the fellowship hall is right there. That's where we'll be.
Thank you, Shane. So I look forward to seeing everyone at the new location next week. Does anyone have an announcement to make? Okay, we will close our meeting with a 4-way test. But Shane, we've already called on Dr. Park. Shane will.
All right, friends, will you please join with me in the things we think, say, and do. First,
It's true.
second,
It's